Hello, friends, and welcome back to From Pain Point to On Point. I'm your host, Britt, and it's so nice to have you back with us. I hope everyone had a really wonderful holiday, a really wonderful new year, that you got everything that you wanted and you got to sleep in every single day. That is my holiday wish to you. It's been really, really nice to take some time and really disconnect, spend time with family, spend time with friends, and not worry about work. But we are in the new year and it's time to dive back in. So, we are going to continue our series today on deep diving into the Bartle player types. And today we are going to talk about achievers, which is going to be exciting. I feel like achievers, kind of as we move through the different Bartle player types, we start to get more and more maybe tangible player types where you really start to understand and can maybe even see yourself in some of these. So today we're going to spotlight the achiever. Achievers are people that are super into crushing goals. They really love having KPIs that they can strive for. They always like a milestone. That's a really prevalent trait among achievers is that they always want to have a milestone to reach for. There are people that are, they were December 30th, they were writing out 31st. Know your months. They were doing their New Year's resolutions and they're going to have goals. They're going to have goals for themselves all year long. And they're going to have big goals, they're going to have small goals. They love them. They love to be able to strive for something. But also the other thing about achievers that's really interesting, and we'll talk more about it as we get into the episode, but it's really all about beating themselves, right? So we'll talk about the differences between achievers and killers, and we'll dive deeper into killers into the next podcast episode. But it's less about trying to beat everybody else and more about really pushing themselves and challenging themselves to do better and, beat their previous records, the whole nine. So we're going to we're going to unpack everything about the achiever today. We're going to talk about what makes them tick. We're going to talk about how you can keep them motivated as a manager. And we are going to talk about how to keep achievers consistently at their peak. Like I said, we'll also talk about how they compare to some of our other Bartle player types and how you can engage them as a manager. So I'll give you some real world examples and yeah, it'll be great. So let's dive on in. All right. So let's just talk about what achievers are. Your achievers are the reps who eat, sleep, and breathe results. They are very intrinsically motivated. That is how achievers operate. They are motivated by progress. They are motivated by visible success. So for achievers, this is all about ticking boxes, hitting goals, and leveling up. So in comparison to some of the other Bartle player types, we know socializers like myself, we thrive on connection, we thrive on collaboration, and achievers are really focused on their own scoreboard. That's really where their interests lie. Killers love to compete. They're really motivated by competition. And achievers, they love to compete too, but like I said, they really love to compete with themselves. That's how they get the most validation and the biggest reward. And then explorers, we know that explorers love to discover. They're really curious sellers. And achievers are kind of less interested in that. They're less interested in the why, and they're more interested or maybe more focused on how fast can I make it happen. So they're really more about just they're kind of like a Pac-Man, just like gobbling up, gobbling up, gobbling up. That's what achievers are like, which is great. I mean, this is great for a sales team. This is great for any team, honestly. They're your quota crushers. They're going to stay late, right? They're going to stay late. They're going to go the extra mile. They're going to do what they need to do in order to get the job over the finish line, because for them, it's all about getting more wins under the belt. And because they are not competitive in the same way that killers are competitive, they really thrive on recognition and they really thrive on their own tangible results. So for some of our more popular industries at SalesScreen, we really cater to a lot of insurance companies and real estate companies and banking and financial services companies. We find that we see a lot of achievers in those industries. They are, in insurance, they're reps that are setting personal bests in policy closings every quarter. Real estates, it's the agents that are juggling multiple listings and hitting all of their sales targets every month. And in banking, they are really delivering on those high value accounts and upselling like it is their job. Achievers are great at upselling. That is also another little tip for you. So the other thing to keep in mind when we're talking about achievers is that sometimes their drive can lead to a little bit of burnout. The achievers can be burnt out pretty quickly because they're just go, 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 go. They're constantly moving. They're constantly trying to do bigger and better and get more. And that can, if you're not careful and if you're not a manager that's not paying attention to that, that can really easily burn them out. And that can be really tough to get them back. And then the other thing too to pay attention to is just tunnel vision. I think as a manager, it's your job to keep their energy focused and give them new challenges to tackle. I think that if you've got an achiever that's really focused on just one thing and they're only doing one thing for an extended period of time, that is another great way for them to lead to burnout. The other thing too is just not forgetting the nuance of motivation, right? We've talked a little bit about motivation in previous podcast episodes. But intrinsically, achievers are driven by personal satisfaction in the feeling of accomplishment. So extrinsically, they crave the recognition of their success, whether that's a trophy or being on the leaderboard or just a really big public shout out. There's kind of the understanding this balance that is the key to unlocking an achiever's potential, which is you know recognizing their hard work and also recognizing that, they're not like killers that are always going to be so cutthroat about competition. And instead, it's really more about their own personal gains and personal growth. So we know that they can get burnt out. We know that achievers can get burnt out. We know that they can get a little bit of tunnel vision if they're not motivated in the right way. So how do you motivate them in the right way? How do you keep your achievers engaged without running them into the ground? Right. So we've got a couple of strategies here for you. The first thing that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to set clear and measurable goals. We know that achievers want to know their targets. They want to know what they're aiming for, right? And that's not just because they need a number. I would argue that every person needs to have very clearly defined goals that they can work towards because ambiguity just does not breed success. But achievers want that number because for them, that number becomes a benchmark, right? So we're going to hit this number and we're going to be better than this. And then this will be our benchmark and we're going to go even higher than that. So this is really less about giving them numbers for visibility and for transparency and for their own autonomy. It's really about giving them the numbers so they know what they have to beat and how much better they can be. The second thing, which we kind of already talked about, is recognition and rewards. So achievers are motivated by the visible proof of their success. And this isn't relegated to just monetary rewards. Any type of reward, any type of anything really works well for achievers. We have a customer who would give out certificates to their teams, and the teams love the certificates. They go bananas for the certificates, and everybody wants it. We had another customer that had a little trophy that they would pass around, whoever won that week for whatever their KPI was for that week, whoever won got to have the trophy on their desk. And that trophy was a bigger honor and a bigger deal to the team than even their commission bonuses or any other type of like monetary bonus. So this is something that we talk about a lot at SalesScreen, and I think it's a really important element to gamification, which is just that, a lot of the times when we think about rewards, we think about monetary rewards. We think about, here's a gift card to something or a bottle of wine or, AirPods or whatever it is, right? But in reality, these like little kind of like dumb, trinkety, even free gifts are so powerful and it's kind of like surprising and shocking how avidly people will fight for just a certificate that says seller of the week or a little tiny dinky $5 trophy off of Amazon. It's really for just the visible recognition and to be able to say that you have it. And it also is a great way to foster some camaraderie around the team and make things like a little bit more fun and exciting that you kind of don't get when it's just like, oh, I'm just gonna get a gift card now, I guess, that doesn't have the same flair. Third thing that you should, third thing that you should do for achievers to keep them motivated and to keep them on track is to track their progress. I think they are as into achieving the goal as they are the journey. And I think that having some sort of tool or having some sort of way to kind of track how they're pacing towards that goal is just really stimulating and really engaging and really motivating for achievers. So it's a great way to keep them engaged in hitting that goal. Whereas with some player types, maybe seeing their progress might demotivate them. It is the opposite for achievers. They're very motivated by seeing how far they've come and how far they have left to go. The last little piece of advice here on motivating achievers is going to be adding new challenges and stretch goals. So if your achievers feel like they've already mastered the role, maybe you run a team of SDRs and there isn't, it's kind of like a little monotonous, right? Like the same tasks over and over. So if you are running a team of SDRs, how do you keep them engaged? How do you keep them motivated? It's kind of hard because at a certain point, it's like there's only so many calls that can be made in a day. There's only so many emails that can be sent in a day. So if we're not switching it up and making it a little bit more interesting, that gets really stagnant for achievers, and that is when they lose interest. So adding some stretch goals for them is or just entirely new challenges into the role is really important and a really great way to keep things fresh for them. So some ways that you might be able to do this, depending on your team and your team makeup and whatnot, is, cross-selling and upselling and expansions. Those are all really great ways to get your achievers kind of engaged in a different part of the business in a different way that will keep them really engaged and excited. So those are a couple of ways that you can keep your achievers engaged. But the other thing too that's really important and I think worth worth mentioning is to really give your achievers an opportunity to contribute to team success as well. Obviously, an individual success contributes to a team success overall, but we don't want to create environments in which achievers are only focused on their individual success. We really do, ultimately a team, whether it's a sales team or any other team, is so much more successful when they are collaborative and you have everybody kind of working towards the common goal. So I think ensuring that you are creating a cohesive and collaborative environment for achievers as well, and that you are allowing them to really feel impactful on team success is another really great way to not only, foster that independence, foster that autonomy, foster that desire to grow and to push themselves, but also to ensure that collaboration is a cornerstone of your team, which is, in my opinion, a cornerstone to success overall. All right, that's a lot. I don't know. Maybe it wasn't a lot. You guys are so smart. So maybe it wasn't even anything. I don't know. I meant to say in the very beginning of this podcast that it's a new year, new me, but the same tiny, again, if you're listening to this on Apple or Spotify, then you don't get to see my tiny mic. But if you go to YouTube, then you can watch these videos and then you can see me talk into a tiny mic. I don't know if that tickles your fancy at all, but it tickles mine. I really love this tiny mic, and it is kind of how I want to conduct every conversation in my life from now on, is using this tiny mic. All right, next thing. Let's zoom out just a little bit. I really want to talk about, we talked on our last episode, we talked a little bit about middle performers, how you engage middle performers through the different Bartle types, specifically socializers. And I want to talk about middle performers and achievers because I think that in the world of Bartle players, I think that you kind of have your two up top, right? Like you have your killers and your achievers, and then you kind of have your two at the bottom, explorers and socializers. And I think that one could argue that your socializers and your explorers are middle performers, right? And that's probably because explorers are not as focused on results as they are about discovery and kind of getting into research and whatnot. And we talked about how that's really beneficial to a sales team and kind of how to harness that power for success. And then socializers are just so deeply collaborative and they really want to do, they want to be a part of the team. They want to feel like they're contributing to a team, which, as a seller is kind of can be a little bit difficult at times, I think. And so I think that naturally one would assume that achievers and killers would be kind of top performers all the time, right? And that's where you're wrong. And that's where you're wrong. And that's why you need this podcast. Just joking. Not every achiever is a top performer, and that's just how it is. And it will be the same for killers as well. Spoiler alert for the next podcast episode. Killers are not always top performers either. And, kind of the point of doing all of this is to give managers the tools on how to make every player on their team a top performer. But I digress. So, like I said, not every achiever is a top performer. And many middle performers have achiever tendencies. They're just not really hitting the full potential yet, right? So, as a manager, it's kind of your job to unlock that potential. But how do you do that? Don't worry. I'm here. I'm here to tell you. I'm here to tell you on this podcast right now. So the first thing that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to identify what's blocking their success. Are they struggling with time management? Have they taken on too much stuff? Are they like really overextending themselves, trying to hit too many goals at one time? Are their goals too vague? Have we not given them enough definition on what it is they need to hit and why? It's really important as a manager to dig into those causes and to really do your own discovery on why someone may not be doing as well as they could be doing on the team. I feel like we've probably talked about this as well at another point in time on the podcast, but just generally, I think that, every person shows up to work and they want to do a good job. I think that for so many of us, our jobs are so tied to our self-worth and our value, and very rarely are people just wanting to do a bad job, because when they do a bad job at work, they feel bad. They feel bad about themselves. And I don't think anybody wants to feel bad about themselves. So as a manager, I think that if you have people on your team and they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing and they're not really, pulling their weight, it's your responsibility to kind of dig in and figure out why that is. And I think for achievers, if they are not being successful and they're not hitting their goals, it is probably because they either need better direction, they need clearer direction on what it is that they're supposed to be doing, or they need better tools to track it. They just don't have the tools in place to be able to see the full picture of their performance and have a clear understanding of where they stand and where they need to go. The next thing I would say is to coach them with some incremental wins. So breaking really big goals, and I would argue that this is an important thing for all Bartle player types across the board. I would say that this feels very human. It's a very human thing. You really do want to make sure that when you're giving your team goals, when you're giving them things to work for, that it's not just here's a gigantic number that we have to hit at the end of 3 months or at the end of 6 months or at the end of a year. Good luck, which can feel really daunting. And it feels kind of like, how do we even begin to tackle something like this? So the way that you tackle that is by breaking it down, right? And as a manager, it's your job to ensure that you're breaking down all of these goals into things that are tangible and also fit within a certain time frame as well. So that would be the second tip is to coach with incremental wins. And then the third tip that I'll give you is pair them with a top achiever mentor. So middle performers in general, regardless of what their Bartle player type is, can really learn a lot if they're shadowing their high performing peers. I think that where you would see the most success with this is when you are pairing like player types together. So if you have a socializer and this socializer is not performing as well, pair them with another socializer that is performing better. Same thing, achievers, pair them with a high performing, oh, achiever. Because the other thing that we really want to do here is we want to make sure that when you're pairing people and when you have top performers mentoring middle and bottom performers, you're not you're not pairing a killer with an explorer, right? Because like how would that even work? And how is that going to benefit how is that going to benefit that explorer if the way that they're supposed to learn and what they're supposed to do is coming from somebody that operates in a completely different fashion than them. So I think where you would find the most success with mentorship is really combining those like player types so that you have people that kind of have like the same they approach work the same way and they have kind of like the same goals and they can kind of adopt a similar style and pick up the tips and tricks that are working really well for that high performing achiever and adopt it into their day to day. And that will be so much more beneficial than just tying them to a top performer, regardless of how that top performer operates, because not much is going to stick from that type of mentorship. So middle performing achievers are really going to thrive in industries and on teams where experience and confidence can build over time. And also with the right guidance, they can go from middle performer to top performer easily. Achievers are, pretty consistent. I would say that achievers and socializers are like your two most consistent groups out of the player types. So it is really beneficial to foster them and to facilitate their growth and to adapt to their styles because that is how you're going to get the best work out of them and that's how you're going to get the best consistent work out of them. And sales is the game of consistency, I would argue, right? And ultimately that's what we want. We want to have consistency in behavior and we want to have consistency in results. So this is probably the best tip that I could give you. All right. We're coming to an end, you guys. This is my first podcast back of the year. I know I said that in the beginning, but I feel rusty. I feel rusty. I feel like I needed a warm-up podcast. I needed to record a warm-up podcast before I recorded this one, but hopefully you guys will find this one interesting and we'll have some good takeaways from it. So yeah, so from today, just as like a little quick recap, we talked about achievers. We talked about how to motivate them. We talked a little bit about their differences between the Bartle player types, some strategies that you can employ to engage your achievers from goal setting to recognition, and then kind of why achiever middle performers are just kind of like a gold mine. They're just waiting to be tapped. They have so much potential that sales managers should really invest in because they, like I said, are going to be some of the most consistent performers on your team if you give them the tools and the environment to really thrive. So, if there's one thing to remember, it would be that achievers need progress. That's going to be really important, whether that is hitting a goal or leveling up their skills or being recognized for their wins or any of that. They're really driven by the journey and and the destination. And so by giving them a goal, a really concrete, clearly defined goal, and also allowing them to see how they get to that goal and see how they progress towards that goal is going to be so beneficial. And again, I would really argue that it's incredibly beneficial to all types of professionals, just in general. We always want to, we want to be able to see the work that we're putting in, and we want to be able to see the results of the work that we've put in. And I think, you really just can't underestimate the power of being able to visualize those goals and also that journey. It's so important, and it really magnifies results, and it boosts motivation, and it increases engagement. And that's why you need a tool like SalesScreen, but you don't need a tool like SalesScreen. You can do this on your own. You don't need a platform to do it. It does help, but you don't need it. So yeah, that's it. That's all I've got for you today. Thank you so much for listening and tuning in. I will be back again in 2 more weeks, and we're going to talk about killers. We're going to talk about the killer player type, and that will be fun. And yeah, we've got some fun things coming up for this year. I'm really excited. I leave tomorrow actually to go to Norway for our annual kickoff in Oslo with the rest of the team. I'm so excited. I can't wait to see everybody. It's going to be a really great time. But while I'm there, I'm also going to be sitting down and chatting with our CEO, Sindra, and we're going to get some really great insights from him. So I'm really excited to film that for you guys. I'm really excited to get that episode out so you can hear all the great stuff that Sindra has to say, and maybe even get some looks into what's coming out in 2025 with SalesScreen, which will also be a lot of fun. All right. That's all I've got for you guys today. Thank you again so much. Please subscribe. We appreciate your support, and have a great day.